you like the choir's attire? You did like it. Thank you. When they went to break the legs of Jesus, and this was normal for them to do when people were crucified, to speed up death, because the way that they took a breath was to push themselves up from their feet to get enough air into their lungs to speak and to breathe. And if you broke the legs, then you couldn't lift yourself up, and so you died for lack of air. But Jesus had already given up his spirit. It is finished was what he said as he gave up his spirit. Joseph of Arimathea was one of the secret disciples of Jesus, also a member of the Sanhedrin. And when he saw that Jesus had died, he went to Pilate and he said, "Can I have the body? Because he's dead." And he had a tomb that belonged to him and his family. It was in the garden, the side of a little slope where they had dug out a little cave, and that was what would be used as a sepulchre. And so he took the body down, and Nathaniel, Nicodemus, if you remember, was also there. And the Bible tells us that they took about 100 pounds of myrrh and aloe, and they wrapped Jesus' body in it more as an embalming process. And they placed his body in that tomb that no one had ever been placed in before. And of course, Mary was there, Mary Magdalene, Mary, mother of Jesus, weeping as they put the stone across the tomb and then went home for the Sabbath, for one was not supposed to do anything on the Sabbath. The day after one loses a loved one is always one of the more difficult days in one's life, isn't it? Because suddenly the activity of all the things that are associated with death and a funeral are all over. And very often friends have gone, colleagues have gone, and family members are together. And it's a time of many tears because the void is felt so strongly at that point. It's a time of laughter as well, as you remember funny moments. It's a time of bringing up very precious memories. And that's what I'm sure was true for the disciples, for those who knew and had walked with Jesus all those days. But the Pharisees on that day had a different agenda. It seemed that while they never believed anything that Jesus said, that they also didn't forget the things that he said, because they went to Pilate the next day and said, "You know, when he was alive, this man used to say that on the third day he would rise again. And so lest his disciples come during this day and take away his body, we ask that you would put guards across over the tomb, around the tomb." And Pilate said, "Do whatever it takes to secure the tomb. Do whatever it takes to secure the tomb." And so they go, they place guards in front, and then the Bible tells us that they put a seal on the tomb. And then on a Sunday like this, Mary Magdalene and Mary got up before the sun came up. And they went to the tomb. And as they were hurrying there, they suddenly thought to themselves and looked at each other and said, "Who's going to roll away the stone? We don't have what it takes to roll a big stone away." And still it didn't stop them. They kept going until to their amazement they stopped at the tomb and saw that there was no stone. The stone had been rolled to one side. And they went in, and there were two angelic forms that inquired and said, "What are you doing here?" And they said, "We've come for our master." And they said, "He is not here. He is risen. Why do you seek the living amongst the dead?" And both of them turned and went quickly to Peter and John and told them, and they hurried, and the Bible tells us that both of them ran to the tomb. But John was the younger of the two, and he outpaced Peter, and he reached the tomb, stood at the door and looked in and saw the grave clothes and no Jesus. And then Peter comes and he doesn't stop at the door, he moves right in and he examines and he finds the headbands as well lying there. And we're told that they believed and yet didn't understand. They believed but didn't understand what it meant. And so they go back home thinking about this. But Mary just stays outside the tomb, weeping, and then she goes back in and sees these two angels, and then she pleads with them for where he is. And then she turns around and Jesus is standing there. And she thinks he's the gardener, and she says, "Sir, please, where have you kept him? Please let me know. I'd like to bring him back." And I think one of the most beautiful words ever spoken come from Jesus when he tells her, "Mary." Mary calls her name. And her eyes are open, and suddenly she recognizes him. Says, "Rabboni, Rabboni, teacher." Jesus says, don't cling to me yet. Don't cling to me yet. Why seek ye the living among the dead? He's not here. He has risen. It's interesting how many songs have been written about this very moment. "O death, where is your sting? O grave, where is your victory?" There's no victory. Death couldn't hold, defend its curse. Death was defeated. The grave was empty. Sin was overcome. And so was Satan. All on that wonderful Easter morning. And beloved, Jesus coming out of that tomb changed history for all of us, because suddenly the penalty for death that was our due, he took upon himself. He paid that penalty. And maybe you're sitting here this evening under a weight of sin. Maybe you haven't been in church for a while. Maybe you've got caught up in worldly things. Maybe you've done things that are too shameful to even talk about them. And you're sitting here and saying, "I just know one thing, that on Easter I need to be in church," and you're here. And the good news, beloved, is that with the death and the resurrection of Jesus, that weight of sin that rests upon you can be lifted. That you who have come into this place weighed down by sin and guilt can leave here free, unfettered, with the knowledge that you will spend eternity with Him. And the only thing that is necessary is to accept Him as Lord and Savior of your life, to accept that He paid the penalty for you. And if I'm speaking to you today, then my prayer is that you would make that transaction, you would have that conversation with Jesus today before you go, because it could change your history and your eternity. But I want to draw your attention to another tool that Jesus stood in front of just a little while before He was crucified. And He stood in front of the tomb of a friend of His, one that He loved deeply. The Bible tells us that His friend Lazarus had been dead 3 days. And Jesus comes, and Lazarus' sisters meet Him, and they wistfully say, if you'd only been here 3 days back, this would have happened. And Jesus surprisingly says, roll the stone away. And they remonstrate with Him and they say, Lord, he's been dead 3 days. There's going to be quite a decay and smell and all of that. And then Jesus, the Bible tells us in a loud voice, said, Lazarus, come forth. And you can picture this pin drop silence of the crowd as they try to listen and see if there are shuffling footsteps coming out of that grave. And then they hear it. And then out from that grave comes the shrouded figure of Lazarus, trying desperately to walk amidst the clothes that have been there. And then Jesus says, untie him and let him go. Beloved, this is the second truth for us this morning. That Jesus says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. He who has conquered death and the grave is still in the business of calling forth life from death. And maybe this morning, in your life, there are things that you have considered dead. There are things that you have given up on a long time ago. There are things that you said they are dead and buried. And I've ceased to think about those things. Dreams, visions, tasks that you think God has invited you to do. Places that He has wanted you to go. Things that He has wanted you to say. Attitudes that He has wanted you to have. Behaviors that He has wanted you to model. All of these you've looked at in your life and said, I'm done. Those can never be. Those can never be. This is who I am. And beloved, I'm here to tell you, no, that's not the truth. That's the lie that Satan would have you believe. That's why Jesus said, I'm the way, the truth, and the life. I'm the way. If you'll follow me, I'll show you how to walk. And truth, if you believe in me, I will resurrect those things in you that you have believed as Satan's lies in your life. Things that have been long dead, Jesus is capable of resurrecting today. He said, I am the life. I can breathe new life into dead bones this Easter morning. Sometimes we carry that, isn't it? Just the dead bones of things that we have thought are long lost and gone. And they are the extra baggage that we have, where we take everywhere. And maybe this morning God is saying to you, I can put flesh and blood on those things. I can renew them. I can give you the wherewithal to make those things happen in your life. Will you let me? For I am the way, the truth, and the life. And I can resurrect things because I overcame death and the grave, Satan and sin. In my hands are the keys. Why seek ye the living among the dead? Is what he said. Why seek ye the living among the dead? Are you willing to let him do that thing in your life that will bring back the living from things that you thought were dead? Christ is risen. I didn't hear you. Christ is risen. Christ is risen. Amen and hallelujah. Beloved, as you come to this table, maybe there are these dead areas that you want to bring to him. Say, Lord, I thought they were done and dusted. But Lord, you've never let that go from me. Would you resurrect them? As you come to this table, would you allow him to do a transaction? Breathe life into those areas of darkness.